Here we are, the final game in the Sword Art Online series, and oh hey, congratulations Sword Art Online for reaching the in-universe release date in real life, but not the real-life release of the game. Is that something to celebrate? Oh well, at least the VR world thought it was worth celebrating, which was kinda ironic and kinda depressing, as today's VR is miles away from being actual VR, like in Sword Art Online. The gimmick that imitates VR of today celebrated the release of Sword Art Online with a VR headset that could kill you in real life. And while I found that to be a very appropriate way to celebrate a series that is about a VR dead game, it's mostly ironic, as today's VR was always able to kill something, or to be more precise, just one thing, that being itself. But yeah, overall, it's kinda depressing to think that we're still far away from this kind of technology that Sword Art Online portrays. Until we get something similar as that, we just have to settle with one of the normal games, and in my case, the last one in the series. I will be honest, everything beyond the Gun Gale Online arc is new for me, and it's exciting! Never thought the day would come I would be this invested in Sword Art Online once more. And considering that the writer is very good at setting up interesting ideas, worlds and settings, I was looking forward to tread new grounds of the series. But I was also very cautious, as Sword Art Online is known for ruining most of its potential, and something that I have seen happening time and time again in every game I played of the series. Still, I saw a slow but steady increase of quality as I continued through the series, so I had some hope that Sword Art Online Alicization Lycoris continues to do that as well. Sword Art Online Alicization Lycoris goes back a bit to its roots. Kirito wakes up and is stuck in an unknown virtual world. With no clue how he ended up there or what happened in the real one, he sets off to find his way back. In other words, yes, that's right boys, Sword Art Online is an isekai once more, and the start of the story really captures that nice exploration feeling that isekais usually come with. As per usual in the series, an interesting world and story is created for this game. This time it's a very zealous fantasy world where the beliefs in the church, their leader and gods shape its very people and their actions. These contradict heavily with Kirito's character, which of course leads to many conflicts. However, as Kirito explores this world and overcomes many conflicts, things start to look dark as a mysterious secret about the church, its leader and the world itself starts to unfold. Of all the games, I would say this world was the most interesting and unique one. So far the games have been completely depending either on its first original setting or cliches, so I welcomed this complete new world with open arms. And I was very happy with the amount of time spent on the setup and exploration of it. The reason why we spend a significant amount of time exploring this world is because we, the player, are not the only one new to the world. Because Kirito is just as unknowing about the world as us, it created a very natural feeling of exploration. And as a side bonus, it took away the overpowered side of Kirito, which was very unexpected. I mean, he still is overpowered, but he's not that overpowered. The decrease in his strength forced him to be more depending on others, making him into an actual likable character, which was a bit weird to say the least. Having Kirito depend on others also offered a nice stage for the new cast of characters. Every Sword Art Online installment comes with a buttload of new characters, but they usually feel like they are designed to be liked based on stereotypes, and not as much by their story and actions. The games do offer these characters a chance to be more, as there is a lot more time spent on them for development than the anime does or ever could, which led to some cases where characters rose above their stereotype. But here in Sword Art Online Alicization, it truly felt like all new characters were there to play a role in the story, rather than just being new waifu material. Though the new characters are pretty good waifu material. Overall, the opening to Alization's story is rather strong, thanks to its linear writing, its interesting world building, and the way we explore it. Having Kirito being nerfed helped this story greatly as well, not only making his character relatable for a change, but made introduction to new characters interesting and natural. There were even nice moments of chemistry between Kirito and the new characters. However, this is still a Sword Art Online story, meaning that it will find ways to mess itself up and waste the good setup and potential in the end. As the story progresses in Alicization, you can feel it slowly drifting off. Suddenly the plot must have huge plot twists piled on top of other huge plot twists. Stakes constantly have to be changed until it's at world-ending levels, yet there was no time spent on building it up. There was time for it, but the writers thought it was better to spend it on filler dialogue than anything else. And this is nothing new. To different degrees I saw this happening in the other games as well. But here it was the absolute worst, as Alicization was the better one in terms of story and world building. You could do nothing but see the plot slowly decaying, destroying everything good it contained and slowly changing to a convoluted mess. And unfortunately it didn't stop there. In Sword Art Online Alicization, another attempt is made to close the gap between the games and the anime. The Sword Art Online games originally followed an alternative timeline based on different outcomes of the first arc in the anime, which is something I always found to be one of the major strengths of these games, as it offered opportunities to create cool and interesting situations that the anime could not. A similar attempt was made to close this gap in the previous installment, which had a huge negative impact on my experience, so I was not that happy to see Sword Art Online Alicization doubling down on closing the gap even further. Now, despite Fatal Bullet's terrible way of connecting the anime, I do think it's really cool when different media work together to create a larger overarching story, or just to connect the stories together. It's this reason why I love a series like Dot Hack, which has multiple stories told in the same universe via different media. In Alicization, the way they try to close the gap or use both medias is quite simple. According to the game, the first two chapters are exactly the same in terms of story as the anime and the books are. And from chapter 3 and forward, the original content from the game starts, the moment where it splits off again from the anime. And while that is true, skipping the first two chapters is not a wise thing to do, even after seeing the anime. I decided to watch it after I played the game to see the differences and see if the skip was justified. And while I was not expecting the same experience as I had with the game, I was expecting the same story, which in hindsight was kind of foolish, as the story told in the anime was almost completely disconnected from the version that is told in the game. The anime skips out on a lot of important build-up and character development that is just needed to continue the story in chapter 3 and onwards. And what is even worse is that during my time watching the anime, it felt mostly like it existed to fill in the gaps that the game's story had left me. So yeah, the suggestion that you can skip 1/3 of the game if you have seen the anime is a very bad one in my opinion. It felt very lazy from a writing perspective, and it makes for a very clumsy and bad experience if you decide to do the skip. Though this is Sword Art Online at its finest, as it's again wasting great potential for seemingly nothing. If there was one moment, the perfect moment to incorporate the anime into the game, it was this one. There were tons of moments where the anime could have elevated the story to a higher level, and heck, it could have even solved the presentation problems that this game has. Sword Art Online games tell their story mostly as a visual novel. It's probably the most consistent used element throughout the whole series. Sometimes they move away from the visual novel presentation, usually it's for small side dialogue, and in rare key story moments they use these really nice looking cutscenes. But overall, it's a visual novel, and it's very consistent in being that. Alicization tries to use the same presentation as its predecessors, but unlike its predecessors, it constantly disrupts its presentation with seemingly unnecessary load screens and even complete switches in presentation styles from time to time. These loading screens took a while, but that might have been caused by the fact that I played this game on the PS4 instead of the PC. But nonetheless, it made following the story and seeing events unfold very jarring and hard to stay invested in. Especially when the game decides to switch between presentation styles, then it really is getting a problem as the styles don't complement each other that well. Now again, they could have made the presentation a bit bearable if they used the anime as support or to elevate certain parts. Though, using the anime would not have been the best solution in my opinion. The best one would be if they finally utilize their own cutscenes more. They always look fantastic and I don't understand why there's only a handful of them in each game. One main element did stay consistent in Sword Art Online Alicization. That being you playing a character that is surrounded and dating a lot of women. On that aspect, Alicization is exactly what a Sword Art Online game should be, and even more, as it's by far the best game in terms of character interaction and romance. Sword Art Online has a ton of characters and introduces even more every single game. You can team up with whoever you want, and the more you fight and interact with them, the better your relationship gets. Once you pick your waifu, you can take her on a date and eventually end up in your tent to just talk. Just talk, and nothing more. Even though characters are mostly designed with their stereotypes in mind, it's always a nice surprise to see them grow beyond that. I was also glad to see that the creepy slowly zoom in date system was back again. It was still surface level in terms of depth, but still slightly improved. Not only did the system make it easier to max out affinity levels with your waifus, but you can also take them out on a date outside of the hub world, which I thought was really cool. It doesn't add anything special to it, but it was nice to be able to combine adventuring and dating. The only problem here is the character you play as. In this game you play again as Kirito instead of your own character. In the previous installment you were able to make your character your own, which was a lot of fun. And it felt like you could make the story and these interactions your own as well. But here in Alicization we are back at the beginning, and while you can create your own character in a creator, it does not impact the story, interactions, or even the in-game cutscenes. Now going into this game, I was not expecting a lot in terms of combat. It would be unfair to expect a similar combat system as the previous installment had, as that was a third-person looter-shooter, something that would not fit the Alicization fantasy setting. Luckily, they did not try to reinvent the wheel and went with a combat system that I can only describe as a mix of re-hollow fragments and hollow realization combat system. This, however, did not make it noteworthy, as it still is a very straightforward, bland action-adventure combat system. Combat encounters are more or less just tank and spank sessions where you grind away large HP bars by spamming attack skills together with your partners. The game offers you options to be more tactical, but using them felt more like for show than anything else. The game offers a standard dodge and parry system, and if used correctly you do fill up a special gauge which allows you to do special attacks once it's full. Those attacks are cool, but they don't feel that rewarding or even worth doing, as you can charge your special gauge by just tanking every hit as well. There is also a command mode, which reminded me of something that Dragon Age Origin did as well. In this mode, time is stopped temporarily so that you can move your companions around and order them to do certain skills. It was a fun reminder, to say the least, but I never found really any use for it. It's overall a shame that none of these elements played a bigger role. The only thing that actually mattered in combat were your numbers. They basically dictate your possibilities in the game. As long as your numbers are equal or above the enemy you face, they basically can't kill you. It's just a matter of time before you grind away their HP. But when your enemies are a couple of levels higher than you, then you will get your ass handed to you, as skills won't make a difference here. Now, I'm not against the numbers game, but in Alicization, numbers got in the way of the available content this game had to offer. They unfortunately decided to make this game semi-open world and sneezed a lot of content over these maps for you to do. Or well, that is the first impression you get. The moment you want to indulge in one of these activities, you will be stopped by the ridiculous level requirements these events have. Even after completing the game, you probably will not be able to play most of this content. Though you can ask yourself if you really want to play the content that is there, as it's very traditional open world busy work, which the combat itself can't carry as something fun to do. But despite the combat's shortcoming, it does offer the most customization options in this game. You can create your own character, or to be more precise, your own version of Kirito, and have full choice in terms of what weapons you want to use. There are a decent amount to pick from, and they all come with different skills, which does change the gameplay slightly, but to me it did more in a visual sense than anything else. There's also a transmog system, though for the female version of Kirito and your followers there are a lot more options than for the male version. Clothing can be unlocked by the before mentioned maximizing relationship with characters, shops, DLC, and unfortunately loot boxes, which is my biggest grudge with this game. You can receive loot boxes by playing the game, or while logging in every day and complete one daily mission, or to play multiplayer. But it's needless to say that to get any actual chance on something good requires an insane amount of grinding. It ultimately just blocks off an element that I and many others love to indulge in the most when it comes to a Sword Art Online game. After playing the whole series of games, my favorite ones are the ones where I can make my own character to my heart's desire. It's the thing I want the most from a Sword Art Online game, playing my own character in a Sword Art Online story/universe. Fatal Bullet did some amazing groundwork on this aspect, but unfortunately they decided that Alicization did not need to follow its example, and decided that most of the customization options had to be put behind a paywall and an unfair grind loot box system. Sword Art Online Alicization Lycoris had everything going for it to become the best game in the series. The world is definitely my favorite part, as it offers interesting conflict and is explored in a very natural way through newly introduced characters. But halfway through the game it becomes very noticeable that the story told here is very incomplete, and instead of using the anime to elevate its story or be a good alternative way to enter this game, it's there seemingly only to fill up the gaps that the game's story has left and to create an overall cohesive story. The newly introduced characters feel very similar as the new cast of characters in Fatal Bullet, but much better in usage and design. One character in particular plays a huge role in the story, and if the presentation allows it, that story arc actually is very enjoyable to see unfold. Character interaction here is definitely the best in the series, in particular the amount. Though that can be a hit or miss for some, as it involves a lot of reading on top of already a large amount of reading you have to do for the main story. Though this is the only part you can skip of the game, and that is the interaction, and go straight for the prize and just date your favorite waifu with the return and slightly improved dating system. Combat is very lackluster and felt like a huge step back. The open world is open, but filled with content that you either can't do or want to avoid, as it's busy work that involves a combat system that is just not enjoyable for longer periods of time. But overall, I am not happy with Sword Art Online Alicization Lycoris, as it honestly felt like a big miss. And yet, I can deal with that. I was able to play it and enjoy it in small amounts. I can even accept lower quality of things like the combat or this game's presentation. But I won't accept it in terms of microtransactions and loot boxes, as they almost completely lock away an element from the game that is beloved by me and others. Overall, Sword Art Online Alicization Lycoris uses barely any of its potential and takes a couple of steps backwards compared to all its predecessors, resulting in a very mediocre game that I would not recommend to anyone, except for maybe the biggest diehard fans of the series itself. Unfortunately, the anime is not a good alternative for the game either, not even to see a glimmer of the interesting world that it creates here. If you really want to play a Sword Art Online game where character interaction is the main element and where you get to create your own character, then I would recommend playing Hollow Realization or Fatal Bullet.